My name is Adeze, and I am 31 years old. 2 months ago, my father called me on a Thursday evening at 6:47. I know it was 6:47 because I was at my desk when the phone lit up and the clock on my laptop was visible on the screen. He did not say hello. He said, "Your mother wants to know if you are coming home for Christmas." Not him, your mother. He was delivering her question, not his own. I had not spoken to either of them in 4 years. This was how it began again. A woman's name in a man's mouth, and a holiday offered like a door held open just far enough to see light, but not quite far enough to walk through. I held the phone and I looked at the document open on my laptop, my November pay stub, loaded while I was cross-referencing my tax estimate. The net figure after federal withholding and benefits contributions sat at $14,216 monthly. My father had worked in county government for 26 years. I knew his salary. I had known it since I was 12 years old. He made $4,800 a month. He had made some version of that number his entire adult life, adjusted by cost of living increments that had never, in 26 years, crossed 5,000. I sat with both numbers visible at the same time, not as a weapon, as a fact. 2 numbers in adjacent mental columns, the way I was trained to think. But here is what my father did not know. I had a folder. A gray expanding folder with 12 interior pockets, a cloth elastic closure worn almost white at the corners, and a strip of white label tape on the front that I had written on in black marker when I was 23 years old, when I first understood clearly what I was doing. The tape said, "Record." That folder had lived in the bottom compartment of my filing cabinet for 4 years, behind my lease agreements, behind my old health insurance documents, behind a sealed envelope of birthday cards from my grandmother who had died in 2018. My parents did not know it existed. No one did, except Kwame and Vera, and neither of them had ever asked to see inside it. The Thursday evening phone call was the moment I understood that we had arrived, finally, at the part of the story that explained why I had been keeping it in the first place. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, not the Akron from the magazine profiles about Midwest revival, the Akron of a 20-minute drive to the nearest Target, of church parking lots full of Buicks, of a Sunoco station on the corner of Strathmore Avenue, where men stood in the mornings with coffee cups, talking about things that moved slowly: the weather, the sports teams, the city budget, the school district. Population when I was born, a little under 200,000. We lived in a beige house with a covered porch that my father repainted dove gray when I was 9, because the original color had faded, and he did not like things to show their age if he could prevent it. My father, Obina, had worked at the Summit County Records Office for 26 years by the time I left for college. He processed deed transfers, permit applications, tax documents, title change requests, government paperwork, the kind that underpins everything other people do, but that no one thinks about until they need it. He wore a short-sleeved button-down shirt every weekday. 3 shirts in rotation: light blue, pale yellow, white. He left the house at 7:12 every morning and returned at 5:31 every evening. You could have set calibration equipment by him. He was a meticulous man, precise about what he could control, because the things he could not control were enormous. And I think the precision in small things was how he managed the weight of the larger ones. He believed in the reliability of government work the way some people believe in scripture. The pension at the end, the health insurance that never lapsed, the vacation accrual sitting in an account, a proof of tenure. He said these things out loud often, not as advice, more as evidence. Evidence that he had made the right choice for his family, that stability was the highest form of intelligence, that chasing something unusual was vanity dressed up in ambition's clothing. He had grown up watching his own father lose a small business during a recession in the late 70s. He had learned what ruin looked like from inside a household. The learning had never left him. My mother, Chidinma, ran our household the way a skilled administrator runs a department she has optimized over decades. She was head of the hospitality committee at St. Therese. She organized the neighborhood block association's annual cleanup, solicited donations for it, and prepared the flyers herself on her desktop computer. She knew which of our neighbors had a daughter in medical school, and she knew when that daughter matched for a residency at a Cleveland hospital, and she knew the hospital's ranking. And she made sure the people in our orbit knew too. My mother's currency was information. Her power came from knowing things first, and from being the person others called when they needed to understand what was happening. She was not unkind. I want to say that plainly. She was a woman who loved her children, and who had decided very early what that love should look like, and who had never, in all the years I knew her, found reason sufficient to reconsider the shape of it. My brother, Emeka, was 4 years older than me. He studied pre-med at Ohio State and became a hospitalist in Columbus. He was genuinely good at it, thorough, careful, attentive to his patients in a way that came from something real in his character, and not just training. But he was also my parents' proof, their living evidence. When people at church asked about their children, my parents said, "Our son, the doctor." And you could hear the fullness in that sentence, the way it completed itself without needing anything added. Emeka had chosen correctly. They loved him for the choice, and additionally because his correct choice made their framework true. I was the second child, and I was the quiet one. I did well in school, not dramatically, but consistently, and I never announced the things that interested me because I understood early that they did not map onto the vocabulary my family used to measure worth. What I loved was different. I loved money. Not spending it, understanding it, the mechanics of it, the way value moved through systems, the way careful decisions made over time could build something that outlasted the decision. I read my father's old Business Week magazines from the early 90s, the ones he kept in a milk crate in the basement, and I built spreadsheets for pleasure, tracking things no one had asked me to track. When I was 15, I spent 3 months recording every grocery purchase our household made. I came home one afternoon, sat at the kitchen table, opened a notebook in front of my father, and showed him a chart demonstrating that 2 changes to our shopping patterns would save $62 per month. He looked at the chart for a long time, longer than I expected. His eyes went across it carefully, row by row. Then he said, "You have too much time on your free hands." He folded the chart along its original crease and handed it back. I found it a year later, folded once in the inside breast pocket of his blue blazer, the one he wore to church. I felt it when I was hanging the blazer in the closet after a Sunday service. I pressed on the outside of the fabric and felt the shape of folded paper under my fingers. I did not take it out. I did not say anything. I hung the blazer up, walked back to my room, and thought about what it meant that he had kept it without saying a single word about it. Not one dinner table comment. Not one follow-up question. The chart existed, silently, in his pocket. That is the thing about my father that I still hold on to, even in the years that followed. He saw more than he said. He kept the chart. He just did not have the language for the kind of seeing it required. Or he had the language and could not make himself use it, and I was never sure which of those was true. In our house, love was expressed through provision and expectation. He provided. He expected. My mother interpreted his will and delivered it. "Your father wants you to be something real," she would say. Real. As if what I was studying, what I was building in myself, what I was already in the process of becoming, was fog. As if a thing only became real when you could announce it at church without needing to explain what it meant. The person who changed the shape of my future was not a professor or an advisor or a family friend. She was a stranger, standing next to a sign-in table at a Holiday Inn in Cleveland on a November morning during my junior year of college. I was 20 years old, I had paid the $60 student registration for the regional personal finance conference out of my own savings. I wore a blazer I had bought secondhand. I arrived 20 minutes early. A woman was standing at the registration table reviewing the panel schedule. She was 47 years old, though I did not know her age then. She was wearing flat shoes and reading glasses pushed to the top of her head. She held the conference program at arm's length, the way people do when they have left the right pair of glasses at home. She asked me which session I was most looking forward to. I told her. She asked me why. That second question, the why, is the one that changed things. Most adults asked what. She asked why. Her name was Vera Hollis. She ran a fee-only financial planning practice in Pittsburgh, a practice she had built from a standing start at age 32 after leaving a corporate banking role where she had spent a decade making other people's institutions profitable. She billed hourly. No products, no commissions, no asset under management fees that rewarded her when her clients simply sat still. She told me she had been profitable in her second year and break even in her first. She said these things the way you state facts, not the way you tell stories. There was no performance in it. She was simply telling me the shape of what she had built, because I had asked why, and she was someone who answered the actual question. We talked for 4 hours that day, not continuously. In the lobby, between sessions, over conference coffee and foam cups, during a lunch break where she skipped the keynote because she had heard a version of it before, and we sat on a concrete step outside the hotel in November because neither of us could find a good reason to go back inside. She asked me questions no one had asked me before. What kind of client did I most want to work with? What kind of financial problem felt most urgent to me? What I thought the biggest failure point in personal planning was for the kind of people I had grown up around. I had answers to all of them. I did not know until that afternoon that the answers had been developing for years, waiting for a conversation willing to receive them. Vera became my mentor. Every Sunday afternoon for the next 2 years, we talked by phone. She reviewed papers I was writing for class, assigned readings that were not on any syllabus, challenged assumptions I had not known I was carrying. She told me to sit for the CFP examination before I graduated. She was the first person who said the word practice to me as a destination, as in build your own, not find a firm that will hire you, not climb inside an institution and accumulate time until they give you a title. Build your own, from the beginning, as a thing with your name on it and your standards in it. The difference between Vera and my family was not intelligence or love. It was what they were trying to see when they looked at me. My family was looking for a familiar shape. Vera was looking at what was actually there. I never told my parents about her. Some things you protect because you understand what will happen to them in the wrong kind of air. The conversation that changed everything between my parents and me happened on a Saturday in October of my senior year. I had accepted an associate position with a small fee-only planning firm in Pittsburgh. 2 years, structured to prepare me for independence. The salary was $41,000. I had been offered 2 other positions, one at a larger regional firm with a higher base and a commission structure I did not trust. One in Columbus, closer to home, that would have made everything easier, except the work itself. I chose Pittsburgh. My parents drove to Akron that Saturday. My mother had made jollof rice and brought it in a covered pot in the back seat. She set it on my kitchen table, and she sat across from me and said, with a gentleness that I knew was not fragility, but precision, "Tell us about this job offer." I told them. The role, the firm, the structure, the salary, the trajectory I was building toward. My father was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted, the way you count things when you are waiting, and the waiting takes on its own texture. Then he said, "Akron hospitals are hiring. Your brother's program director knows the administrator." I said I was not going into healthcare. He said, "The city's finance division has openings. Benefits, pension. You would not have to start over every year." I said I wanted to work for myself eventually, and that this position was the path to that. He put both hands flat on the table. He said, "What is the security in that? What happens when a client decides to leave? What happens when there is a recession? Who covers you?" I explained what fee-only fiduciary planning meant. I explained that clients in a recession often need more guidance, not less. I showed him research on the profession's growth trajectory. I had it printed. I had brought it because I had known this conversation was coming, and I had prepared for it the way I prepared for difficult client meetings, with documentation and a clear understanding of what I was trying to communicate. He looked at the papers. He looked at my mother. Something passed between them, a silent referendum. The vote was already decided before it was cast. My mother said, "We had expected something different, not because we doubt you, because we do not understand this, and when someone at church asks us what you do, we will not know what to say. Something with a title, something people know." I said, "I understand." I did not fight. I cleared the table. I wrapped the leftovers in containers and labeled them. My mother watched me from across the kitchen with the expression of someone watching a door close and deciding whether or not to step through before it does. She let it close. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Cream stationery. My mother's handwriting, my father's voice. It said they would not be able to support this direction. If I chose this path, I was choosing it alone, and they would not pretend otherwise. The family had sacrificed too much to watch their daughter turn away from stability for something she had invented out of ambition. They hoped I would reconsider before beginning. And then, "If you will not reconsider, we ask you not to call us until you have." I read it 3 times. I sat at my kitchen table on the 3rd floor of a building on Exchange Street in Akron, and I read it 3 times, and I did not cry. I thought, this is a document. I do not know why that was the thought that arrived. It was not planned. It was not defiance. It was the way my mind arranged itself around things that needed to be held. A document has edges. A document has a date. A document does not change based on how anyone feels about it later. I folded it once along its original crease. I placed it in a gray expanding folder with 12 interior pockets that I had bought at the Staples on the way home from class that same afternoon. I labeled the folder with a strip of white tape and a black marker. I placed it in my filing cabinet, and I went to make dinner. Item 1. Letter from parents. October 19th. Instruction not to call until I reconsidered the career decision. I moved to Pittsburgh in January. I started at the firm on a Monday. The work was harder than I had anticipated, and more absorbing than I had let myself hope. The learning curve was real and steep. The clients had money and anxiety in roughly equal measure, which is a specific and demanding combination, and they needed someone who could hold both without flinching. I learned to hold both. I called Emeka on a Sunday in February and told him about the letter. He said, "I know. They told me." He said it would blow over. He said these things always did in families. He sounded like he meant it. He did not call again for the rest of that year. My first birthday without a card was April 9th. I was 22. I put a block on my calendar for the morning that said, birthday. I went to work and I came home and I made pasta. I thought about 21 previous birthdays, the cakes my mother made from scratch, the card my father always signed the same way. From Dad. 2 words. Nothing else. Nothing more. Just enough. Item 2. Birthday. April 9th. No card. No call. I want to explain something about the folder, because I think it matters. I was not keeping it out of bitterness. I was not keeping it to use against anyone someday. I was not building a case. I was doing what I had always done. What I had done with the grocery chart and the Business Week magazines and every spreadsheet I had ever opened, for the pleasure of understanding how things worked. I was documenting reality. I needed one system that told the truth regardless of how anyone felt about it later. The dates are not debatable. That was all I needed. Year 1 in Pittsburgh. The loneliness was specific. Not the kind you feel when you have nothing to do, but the kind you feel when you have everything to do and no one who quite understands what any of it means. The other associates at the firm had families nearby, Saturday dinners they drove home to, parents who called on Sunday evenings to ask how the week had gone. I had Vera's Sunday calls. I had the work. I had a studio apartment on the 3rd floor of a building on Penn Avenue, where I made dinner every night and fell asleep reading case files, and woke up in the morning and went back to the office. I was not unhappy. I want to be clear about that. I was doing exactly what I had chosen. I just had not anticipated how much of it I would be doing in silence. Item 3. First Thanksgiving alone. November. Made pasta. Noted. Item 4. Christmas. Card from Vera. No card from Strathmore Avenue. Noted. I passed the CFP examination on my first attempt at the end of year 1. I called Vera on the afternoon the results posted. She said, "Of course you did." She said it the way you state a fact you have known for some time. I went to a diner on Walnut Street and ate cherry pie at a table by myself and thought about who else I might have called a year before. I could not call my parents. I did not know if Emeka would understand what the credential signified. I sat with the good news, and I was alone with it, and I felt the weight of that in a way that was different from sadness, but directly adjacent to it. Item 5. CFP examination passed. November. Nobody in the family to call. Item 6. Birthday card from Vera. April. First card from anyone in 2 years. She wrote, "You are building something. Keep going." I read it 4 times. I put it in the folder not because it was a grievance, but because it was part of the record. Because the record was not only what had been taken, it was also what had been given. I opened a LinkedIn profile that spring and listed my current firm and my credentials. 3 days after the profile went live, I received a profile view from an Akron zip code. The platform does not reveal names for basic views. I noted it anyway. Item 8. LinkedIn view. Akron area code. Year 2. I could not prove who. I kept the record. By the end of year 2, I had begun building my own client relationships within the firm's umbrella. The partners had a structure for associates who demonstrated capacity, a bifurcated billing arrangement where I kept a percentage of my originations while remaining under the firm's license. 8 clients by the end of year 2, 14 by the end of year 3. I worked evenings. I worked Saturday mornings before the partners arrived. I was meticulous in a way that came naturally because I had watched a meticulous man for 22 years and had learned, even from disagreement, what precision looked like in practice. I had also learned from watching what precision without flexibility costs a person to try to build both. In the winter of year 2, Emeka got married. He had told me 6 months before. He said, quietly on the phone, "They will not invite you. I want you to know that the decision is not mine." I said I understood. He said he was sorry. I said I knew. He got married on a Saturday in January in Columbus. I know the date because I had noted it in the folder the moment he told me. I did not send a gift through the family. I mailed one directly to his home address, a set of kitchen knives he had mentioned wanting once, 2 years before. He texted me the day it arrived. "Thank you, Ada." Nothing else. I texted back, "Congratulations." Nothing else. Item 14. Emeka's wedding. Not invited. Gift sent directly. 2 sentences exchanged. I was not building a case. I want to say that again because I think it is the thing most easily misread. I was not planning revenge. I was not organizing evidence against anyone. I was doing what I had always done. I was keeping the record straight, the way my father kept his files, the way I had kept the grocery chart, the way careful people keep things that matter in order to stay certain about what is real. Every returned card, every silent birthday, every year that passed had its place. The folder was not a wound I was tending. It was a ledger I was keeping accurate. Vera and I maintained our Sunday calls. By year 3, they were more peer conversations than mentor exchanges, though I never thought of her as anything other than the person who had made the rest possible. She began consulting me on practice management questions. I understood what that meant. It meant she trusted how I thought. In the spring of year 3, I met Kwame at a dinner party in Squirrel Hill. He was an architect, originally from Accra, 4 years in Pittsburgh. He was the quietest person at the table. He listened to everything before responding to anything. When he said something, it was because he had something to add. We dated for 6 months before he met Vera. He came to Pittsburgh permanently 2 months after that. He had left a firm in Chicago to build something of his own, which was how I knew, structurally, that we understood each other. We both knew what it cost to choose the more honest path when the easier one was available. I told Kwame about my parents on a night in January when neither of us could sleep. 11 o'clock, his kitchen, the particular quiet of a city after midnight. I told him the whole thing from the beginning. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said, "Do you want to reconcile with them, or do you want to understand them first?" I thought about it for a real amount of time. I said I needed to understand them before I could know what reconciliation would mean. He said, "Then take your time." That was all he said, those 4 words. I have thought about them many times since. Item 15. 3 years in. Kwame says, "Take your time." Year 4, I launched my practice. Adeze Okafor Financial Planning, LLC. I filed the LLC paperwork on a Tuesday morning in March. A client referral was waiting. She signed her engagement letter that same afternoon. I emailed Vera. She replied in 12 minutes. "I told you." The Pittsburgh Business Times ran a feature on emerging professionals in financial services. I was one of 8 people profiled, 11 paragraphs, a client quote I approved. A photograph where I am looking directly into the camera. And I look, I think, like someone who slept reasonably well, even though I had not slept well in weeks. The piece ran on a Thursday. By Saturday, my cousin Adana had texted to say she had seen it and was proud of me. By Saturday afternoon, Emeka had texted. They saw the article. Mom said, "So she did it." No punctuation. No comment of his own. I looked at the text for a moment and then put the phone face down. I printed the article. Item 22. Pittsburgh Business Times. Year 4. Then came the group chat. My cousin Obiageli got married in Cincinnati in the late summer of year 5. I was not invited, which I had expected. What I had not expected was what came afterward. My mother had been added to a WhatsApp group called Family Updates. Her sisters, several cousins, Emeka, and various extended family members. One member, my cousin Adana, had not been informed about the estrangement. She saw a message my mother had written in the group, did not understand its context, and forwarded me the screenshot without comment. No explanation, just the image. The message read, "Ada is doing something in finance in Pittsburgh. She made her choice, and she chose that over her family. We pray for her, but we cannot sit here and pretend she chose well." 3 aunts replied with agreement. 2 sent emoji responses. Not one person in the chat said, "Wait, that is not fair." Not one person said, "We should not be talking about her this way." No dissent. No pause. I sat at my desk and read the screenshot twice. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. I want to be specific about this. Not anger. Something quieter and more precise. The particular sensation of having understood that you were being talked about in closed rooms for years and then seeing the actual language they used. You know it in the abstract. You can feel the shape of it. Seeing the words is different. The words exist separately from the feeling. They are dated and time-stamped, and they do not change. Item 23. Group chat screenshot. Forwarded by Adana. No context. My mother's words. 3 aunts in agreement. No dissent from anyone. I filed it behind item 22. I closed the drawer. I told Kwame that night. He listened to all of it. When I finished, he stood up from his chair, walked to where I was sitting, put his hand on my shoulder, sat down next to me, and said nothing. He did not say anything because there was nothing to say that was more useful than that. Some gestures replace sentences entirely. Year 6, 62 active clients. I hired an associate who sat for the CFP while working for me and passed on her second attempt. Vera sent 3 referrals, clients of hers who had relocated out of Pittsburgh. I understood the referrals for what they were, an elder passing something forward deliberately, not casually. I sent her flowers. She called to say they were more than necessary. I said I knew. She said thank you. My father viewed my LinkedIn profile again. Different device, same Akron zip. Item 26, year 6, second documented instance. I could not prove it was him. I noted it. Year 7. I was invited to speak at the same Cleveland conference where I had met Vera. The same hotel, a room 2 floors above the lobby where we had sat on a concrete step, and I had discovered that someone wanted to hear how I thought. I stood at the podium and said the things I had needed to hear when I was 20. I said them without dramatizing them, because Vera had taught me that the most useful things can be said plainly. In the 3rd row, a woman who looked about 22 was writing everything down with a ballpoint pen, the urgent, fast writing of someone afraid something will leave before she can hold it. She reminded me of myself in a way that made me look at the wall for a moment. I had to, or I would not have been able to continue. That November, an asset management firm approached me about a contracted senior consulting role, part-time, structured not to interfere with my practice. The monthly retainer, after self-employment taxes and allocated overhead, cleared at $14,216. I remember the exact moment I processed that number, a quiet Wednesday afternoon. I opened a blank spreadsheet column from Habit. 2 rows. My monthly retainer, net, my father's monthly salary, which I still knew precisely, a number I had never let myself forget. The ratio, 3.07. I sat with that for 4 seconds. I closed the spreadsheet. I got up and made tea. If you have ever had someone decide in advance what you were worth before you had the chance to show them, I think you understand what it feels like to sit with that number. Not triumph, not relief, something more precise than both. A number on a screen, and 8 years behind it, and a gray folder in a filing cabinet, and a woman on a concrete step in November who asked me why, not just what. Drop a comment if this story is landing somewhere close to home. Tell me, because I think more of us carry this quietly than we are willing to admit out loud. And if you have not subscribed to Reckoning episodes, this is a good moment to do that. My father called on a Thursday at 6:47. He said, "Your mother wants to know if you are coming home for Christmas." I said I did not know. He said it would mean a lot. I said I understood. He said things can be different. I said I understood. He said your brother will be there. I said I knew. He said to think about it, and he said goodbye. Formal. The particular goodbye of a man who has delivered the thing he prepared and does not know what to do with the silence after. I sat for a moment. Then I opened the filing cabinet and pulled the gray folder from the bottom compartment, behind the lease agreements, behind the insurance documents, behind the envelope of my grandmother's birthday cards. I set it on the desk. I opened the elastic closure. I turned to the last pocket. Item 29. Date, time, content of call. 4 years of silence. And then, your mother wants to know. 29 items. 8 years, 1 folder. I called Vera that night. I said, they reached out. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I want them to understand what they are actually asking. She said, then show them. I booked a train to Akron for the second Saturday in December. I arrived at the house on Strathmore Avenue at 10:09 in the morning. I had not been inside that house in 4 years. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing the pearl stud earrings she wore every Sunday for as long as I could remember. She had on a beige sweater I did not recognize. She looked different in the way people look different when 4 years of small increments arrive all at once in a single moment. All the changes you were not there to observe happening individually, landing simultaneously. She was older. Not dramatically, honestly. She said, "You look well." I said, "Thank you." I had the gray folder and a canvas tote on my shoulder. My father was in the kitchen. He had made tea and set 3 cups on the table, each on its saucer, spaced evenly, with a small dish of sugar and a spoon alongside. He had done it carefully, and I noticed the care because I recognized it as his language, the one he used when he did not have the other kind. He looked at me when I came in, and he nodded. I nodded back. I went directly to the kitchen. My mother followed. My father was already there, standing near the counter, and he sat down at the head of the table. He had a sheet of paper folded in thirds in front of him. He slid it across the table to me. I unfolded it. A list, handwritten in his deliberate square script. It said, "We would like to begin again." It said, "We are getting older, and this distance is not what we want." It said, "We would like to know your life." It said, "We are asking you to come home." 5 items. No apology. His name at the bottom. I read it once. I set it on the table. I reached into the canvas tote and pulled out the gray expanding folder and set it next to his list. 2 documents on the kitchen table. His and mine. The contrast did not need to be named. It was visible. My father looked at the folder. My mother's hands went very still. I said, "I would like to start from the beginning." Neither of them said no. I opened the folder to item 1, the letter on cream stationery. My mother's handwriting, my father's words. I placed it face up on the table, and I said, "Item 1, letter, October 19th. Instruction not to call until I reconsidered the career decision." I said, "I did not reconsider. You knew that when the call stopped." My mother opened her mouth. I raised one hand, palm forward. Not an interruption, a continuation. She understood the distinction, and she waited. Item 2, birthday, April 9th. No card, no call. I turned 22. I set the note beside item 1. My father was looking at the table. Item 5, CFP examination, November. First attempt pass. I wanted to tell you. I did not because you had asked me not to call. I went to a diner by myself and ate cherry pie. My mother made a small sound, not a word. Item 8, LinkedIn view, Akron area code, year 2. I do not know which of you it was. I kept it because it told me you were paying attention. My father's jaw moved. He said nothing. Item 22, Pittsburgh Business Times, year 4. I slid the folded article across. Emeka texted me that Saturday to say you had seen it. He said, "Mom said so. She did it." 2 words of acknowledgement, delivered secondhand. I took out item 23 last. I placed the screenshot face up in front of my mother. Her words in her own font, readable, dated. Her sister's responses below. The kitchen was very still. My mother looked at the screenshot. She looked at it for a long time. Then she began to cry. I watched her because I had watched her cry before at other moments in our lives. I knew what this cry looked like, its sound and tempo and purpose. It was the cry that meant things were not going the way she had arranged for them to go. And then something changed. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, the performance of it paused. Something different moved through her face. Something that was not managed grief, but real grief. The grief of a woman who had looked at her own words in someone else's hands and understood them in a way she had not understood them when she wrote them. She looked at the screenshot, and she looked at me, and for those 2 or 3 seconds, she looked like someone who knew precisely what she had done and had no way to undo it. Then it passed, and the other cry came back. She said, "We never stopped loving you." I said, "I know." "We were afraid. Your father gave everything to make sure you children had something that could not be taken away." I said, "I know what he gave us. I have always known." My father said, "I kept your chart, the grocery one, from when you were 15 years old." He was looking at the table when he said it. It was very good work. I sat with that for a moment. I said, "I know. I found it in your blazer pocket. I never said anything." He looked up. Something moved across his face that I could not name exactly, but understood. The expression of a person who has been seen doing something they did not intend to be seen doing, and who is deciding whether to be embarrassed or relieved. He chose, quietly, to be relieved. I said, "You told me in October, and again in the letter, that what I wanted was not real, not stable, that I was choosing wrong. But you kept the chart. Both of those things were true at the same time. I needed to know which one was more true. I needed to know whether the doubt was stronger than what I saw in your face when you looked at the work." He did not answer. He looked at the table. I reached into the folder one final time. I took out the November pay stub. I set it on the table face up without commentary. The net figure in the lower right field, $14,216. Monthly. My mother looked at it. My father looked at it. Neither spoke. I said, "I am not showing you this to win. I am showing you this because you told me, more than once, that I was choosing instability. I want you to know what I chose." My father picked up the pay stub. He held it with both hands and looked at it the way he had looked at the grocery chart 20 years before, careful, corner to corner. He set it down with the same care. He said, "It is a good number." I said, "It is." My mother looked at the folder and the documents spread across the table. She said, "All of that?" I said, "All of that. 8 years, 29 items." She said, "I did not know you were keeping it." I said, "I did not know I was, not at first. I kept it because I needed something that could not be rewritten. The dates are not debatable. That was all I needed." My mother reached across the table and put her hand over mine. She held it there. Her hands were cool, the way they had always been cool. A physical fact I had forgotten, and that returned completely in that moment. I did not pull away. My father stood up and walked to the kitchen window, the one that looked out at the dove-gray porch. He stood with his hands in his pockets, and he said to the window rather than to me, "You are your own person. You have always been your own person. I think I knew that when you were 15 and you showed me the chart. I did not know what to do with the knowing." He turned around. He said, "I do not know how to say that I was wrong in the way it deserves to be said. I need more time to find those words. I am asking you to let me find them." I said, "Take your time." He sat back down at the head of the table, and he refilled my tea without asking. He poured it carefully, to the right level, without spilling. That was his language. I let him use it. My mother loosened her grip on my hand. She said, "Stay for lunch." I said, "Okay." If someone came back for you after the numbers changed, or if they rewrote what they said before you had the proof to correct them, I need to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if this reminded you that your quiet documentation was not pettiness, but precision, share it with someone who has been keeping their own record and wondering whether it was worth it. Subscribe to Reckoning episodes so you never miss a story like this. 2 weeks after Akron, My mother called on a Tuesday morning at 9:22. Not a weekend, a weekday morning, which was not a time she called anyone who was not family in crisis. I looked at the phone ringing on my desk, and I sat with it for one full ring before picking up. She said, "I have been thinking about what you showed us, about the group chat." She did not minimize it. She did not say it had been taken out of context, or that she had been upset when she wrote it, or that the other women in the chat had encouraged her. "I told your aunts that I had spoken about you carelessly, and that it was not right. I did not explain the whole situation to them, but I told them, and I am telling you that I told them." It was not a full apology. It did not name every returned card, every silent birthday, every year of distance, everything that had its place in the gray folder. But it named that one, the most visible one, the one with witnesses, and she named me in it, and she used the word careless, which was closer to accurate than I had expected her to come. And she did not mention the paycheck. She said nothing about the number on the table or what it represented or what it proved about the choices I had made. She said only that she had been careless with my name in a room where I was not present. That distinction mattered more than the sum of what was not yet said. I said, "I believe you." I said, "Believing you and trusting you are two different things. We start slow." She said, "Yes, slow is fine." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You were always so careful with things." I did not know if she meant the folder, or the work, or my whole way of being in the world. I think she meant all of it. I said, "Yes." That was all. My father has not called me directly since that Saturday in December. He texted me once on a Sunday in January. The message said, "Watching the game. Good match today." No punctuation, no context, no specification of which sport, which teams. I looked at the message for several minutes. I thought about a man sitting in the kitchen on Strathmore Avenue on a Sunday afternoon in January, the light coming through the window over the porch, the dove gray visible through the glass. I texted back, "Good." I did not know if it was an olive branch or a man watching football who did not want to be entirely alone in it. I think it was probably both. I think most things from my father are probably both. Emeka called me on a weeknight in late January, late enough that I knew he had been working himself up to it for some part of the evening. He said he had heard I came home. He said, "How did it go?" I told him the compressed version. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "I should have called more. During all of it, I should have called." I said, "Yes." He said, "I know." We talked for 40 minutes after that about his children, about a patient case that had troubled him, about a restaurant in Columbus he had been to recently and thought I might like. It was the longest conversation we had had in years, maybe ever. The longest that had been just the two of us, without a holiday or a crisis or a parent in the background setting the shape of the exchange. He did not make a formal apology for 4 years of distance. He named the thing once, and then we moved past it. Some messages are their own answer. The folder is still in my filing cabinet, behind the lease agreements, behind the insurance documents. I have not moved it since I returned from Akron. I have not added anything, and I have not taken anything out. It belongs to a chapter that is not finished, but is no longer the primary one. I am not ready to put it somewhere less central. There is still something I need it to be. Present, but not active. Visible as a reminder, not as a threat. I kept it because I needed one thing that was true, regardless of how any of us felt about it. I needed the dates to be clear. I needed item 1 to say October 19th and not to be subject to anyone's revision of the timeline. That is not a complicated thing to need. It is a very human thing to need. The record means I was not confused about what happened. I was not making it worse than it was. I knew what happened, and it happened the way I know it happened. Family is not the people who share your last name. Family is not the people who show up once the paycheck looks like something they recognize. Vera was my family before I had a credential, before a single client signed an engagement letter with my name on it. Kwame was my family before I knew what the practice would become, when it was still just a plan and a licensing application, and a folder I was not sure I would ever need to open in front of anyone. The woman in the third row at the Cleveland conference, writing everything down, she belongs to a family I am part of that has nothing to do with Strathmore Avenue. My parents are not my enemies. They are two people who were afraid and who managed their fear in a way that cost me more than they knew they were spending. I can hold that and also hold the possibility that we are at the beginning of something different, something slower and more honest than what we had before. I can believe my father kept the grocery chart and also believe he should have said something about it when I was 15. Both things are true. I do not need one to erase the other. That is not weakness. That is precision. That is my story. 8 years. 29 items. One gray expanding folder with a white label in black marker that says record, sitting in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet in Pittsburgh, behind the lease agreements, behind the old insurance documents, behind a sealed envelope of birthday cards from a woman who knew my name without being reminded to remember it. If this story reminded you that your quiet record-keeping was not bitterness, but exactness, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Drop a comment, subscribe to Reckoning episodes, and I will see you in the next one.